right, everyone, we are live. I am thrilled to have today with me Daniel Cunningham from, formerly from Leonardo and then now president of Venderoo, to talk about maintenance and software in this space. Especially excited because, like, if you take a look at some of the products that are out there, obviously we're in this space, and we learn about maintenance. Maintenance is really kind of feels a lot like the last mile from an AI and then an automation. And you'll often get a ton of people pushing back on maintenance as its potential around AI because of their understanding of how AI works or how maintenance works, all the work that's being done. And we take a look at those conversations, you step back and you realize there's a whole lot more that's possible about trying to make life better in this specific role that's so important for these organizations. Like, you take a look at retention, you take a look at all the data around retention, and it just comes down to that resident experience, that renewal experience, that maintenance experience. How do we make it better? And the challenge we have right now is we're super overloading all of these people that are doing this work. And so there's no chance for them that. Like, I really feel, and we were chatting about this earlier, I feel that it's almost unfair, the amount of work that they have to do at the site level. Because the context switching that is thrust upon them, go make ready 301, and then you're halfway through the wall paint, and all of a sudden there's a flood in 1292, and you got to go, or a toilet flushing in 1292, you got to drop the paint. All that stuff is like really impairing the ability, even the probability to be successful in these roles. And so me, of course, if you're following the stuff we're writing, talk a ton about AI, talk a ton about how AI can actually enable, and data can enable this transformation that's happening. So thrilled to kind of touch on those bases today with Daniel. Getting how yes buyer, we're talking about the buyer. So think about the buyer in this space is that when you're trying to find the buyers that are seeking change, and why are they seeking change? Often it's a case that they can't hire the right people. Often it could be the case of getting bad Google reviews. I'll let Daniel speak to that a little bit further. But they prioritize solving this problem.
I think you stole all my thunder already. I mean,
I'm leading it up. I mean, luckily
you kind of nailed the premise, though. Although I want to take umbrage with just one thing you said, which is it's kind of like the last mile. And a lot of times when we use the term like the last mile in this or the last mile in that, we're usually referring to it as the last mile because it's like everything else that was important got done already. And this is like the last bit that just needs to be done, right?
Well, or it's the reason why it's not successful, right? Because they'll say like, oh, we don't have rural or internet's not a place because the last mile hasn't been configured, or transit isn't widely adopted because the last mile can't be made accessible. But like, so they kind of throw it around loosely. It's a good point, right? Like, how do we can address that from a maintenance perspective? Because we take a look at all the scope of all the things, and it's like it's the hardest thing to do.
That's really it. It's in this case, the last mile is like it might be the lagging technology that's being developed that's related to AI, but that's not because it's the least important. It's because it's the most difficult. Arguably, it's the most important in many respects because we know that maintenance has the greatest impact on resident retention, for example. We know that most of the phone calls that come in on any given day are related to maintenance. And if those aren't handled or there's no response to those, or the transactional data that's conveyed during those calls is not captured in the work orders, like all those things are really hard to do, but they're all really, really important. And so I just want to set the table there. I think that this is only the last mile in that it was easier for AI to start in things like leasing, basic resident communications, because that's lower hanging fruit.
And the interesting thing about it, because of the data, right? Like, structured data is easier to automate versus unstructured data. Quality data that's controllable, leasing, versus uncontrollable data like maintenance. Like, it comes in, like, I've got a leak, my living room has a leak. That's the quality of data you get. And you got to work on that. Like, it's difficult.
Yeah. And I think the inputs, the range, the universe of inputs for a leasing inquiry are much more narrow, far more narrow than a maintenance inquiry. And so the ability for AI to understand context and respond in a meaningful way was challenging up until recently. I mean, very recently.
Well, I think that's what's so
So
exciting where we're at right now is that the technology evolution has opened the aperture about what's possible
yeah,
because we've gone from this constrained point of view of what's possible, but now the technology has changed the rules of what we can do. And
yeah.
so let's get into that. So a bit about Daniel, a bit about your background, Dan, and why what led up to this opportunity to get into Vendaroo and solve this problem specifically around maintenance.
Yeah, so I've been in the industry for a long time,
Yeah.
over 20 years at this point, and I feel like I have a fairly unique profile in that I have been on the ownership side, the operations side, and the prop tech side as a founder,
Yeah.
I have got I think a unique perspective on really the entire arc of what's involved in multifamily operations. So I cut my teeth early at Aimco, running asset management for the West region there, and then worked for a developer in LA who owned about 5,000 residential units and asked me to start a property management company for them. So I started a management company. I bought that management company because for some reason I thought that was a good idea to own a management company. And so I ran a management company in Los Angeles that operated eventually around 4,000 or 5,000 units between California and Arizona. And then from that experience, the Aimco asset management experience, the property management experience, gleaned that there was really this huge disconnect at the site level between what the expectations were that of what should be happening there with respect to maintenance and risk management and inspections and kind of asset management, things that asset managers think about. There was this disconnect between what was expected and what was actually happening. And there was very few controls, almost no insight in what is actually happening. And so that was the impetus to start Leonardo 24/7, which the goal there was to automate all of that and capture that data. And so we started Leo in 2014 is where we launched the first product. And then I ran Leo until last year, where we decided that we raised a little more money. And when you raise some more money, usually with private equity guys, they like to run companies for 3 to 5 years when they raise money. And I'd run the company for 10 years. I was really interested in AI, and it seemed like a good time to say, let's bring a CEO in to take Leo from where it is now, let them grow it, and I can start pursuing something else that I have a lot of passion about, which is the effect that AI is going to have on this industry, which is substantial, as you know. So I had already become familiar with one company that I partnered with at Leo, who was focused on maintenance, and they were one of the very first ones to do that. And so I became familiar with kind of what was possible. And then when I witnessed what was happening with Elise, who was starting on the maintenance, or sorry, on the leasing side, and then met the founder of Vendaroo, Reza, and got sort of exposed to what was happening, what they were accomplishing technically, which was far, far, far beyond what I had seen in any other incarnation. And so I got a chance and they had started in single family homes, which is a much more difficult market than multifamily, and had great success there.
Yeah, the veracity of the data in single family it's infinite, right? Every unit is different. There's no 2-bedroom, 2-bath. It's like they're all different. You know?
And their processes are all different. These are generally smaller operators. They've got very bespoke workflows. If you can accommodate that, then multifamily is a cakewalk comparatively.
Yeah.
So, and they had succeeded there. So
yeah, I think we're talking about like the SFR to multifamily side. And had this conversation at least 4 times in the last 3 weeks. Is that with all this SFR noise that's happening, that is like a big distraction for their businesses. They're all understanding that there is a disruption that's going to happen to them, not with them, and they're seeking other markets. And we talked about this back in the fall last year, that the march to multifamily from the SFR side thing is going to be very quick, and we're going to see this property manager's dilemma occur on the multifamily side, where they're realizing that the expertise that makes them unique is going to be quickly replaced by the expertise that is survivable right now on the operations side. Like if you may be great, you may have been an all-star from let's say from 2020 to 2024, but like 2025, the rules on the road changed, and it's all about operational excellence. And that was the only way to survive in SFR. And so I find it really exciting to have conversations with folks like yourself around what's possible, because the hard part has already been won. And now it's just applying it to a different sub-vertical within the vertical. And that's quite exciting when you think about what's possible with the data sets and the AI pieces. And like, what I think is really funny when we talk about AI is that most of the stuff we're talking about in the maintenance piece is really about the flow of work. Like, that's the problem we need to solve right now. Very few people have dug it into, okay, if we start capturing data correctly and we can optimize the flow of work, imagine the amount of other data we can start surfacing around the assets, because the asset has a massive gap itself in the data capture, because it's all caught in people's minds.
Before we march off into the world of data, I want to bring this back to the thing you started out this call saying, which is that multifamily has operated, when comparison to SFR, with an embarrassment of riches at the site level, of skilled people who can do things, who can perform the repairs, take the calls from the residents, enter the work orders. Like, SFR has almost none of that, right? It's a scramble for resources, like precious vendors who will probably pick up your phone call when you need somebody to come fix a toilet.
Right.
And, managers who will probably show up for work that day and deal with whatever issues. Like multifamily has been so much easier by comparison, but something changed maybe before this, but definitively during COVID, something changed. And that is, people started getting other options of where they could work outside of multifamily, and multifamily is difficult and not always a fun place to play. And if you have other options, like, a lot of people are taking them. So we saw a massive drop in the number of people that were coming into this industry. And so now suddenly we didn't have the same, we don't have the same level of staffing necessarily that we used to have. And it's harder to find people to fill those positions. And so people start talking about, well, maybe we got to centralize and create a pod of people and whatever, or we're just going to expect the staff on site to just do more. And this is what you were leading with, which is our maintenance staff right now, like, they have to do everything. They've got to field phone calls from residents, placate them when they're angry, sometimes for unreasonable reasons. They've got to triage and decide if it's even a work order, figure out if it's an emergency, escalate to the right emergency people. If it's not work order related, shunt it to somebody else, capture all the data and get it into the work order when they create it, and then continue to correspond with that resident in a timely fashion, so the resident feels like they're getting great care. Capture the data that happens when they're corresponding with the residents, and put that all into the work order. And they have to do all of these things, and it is too much. It's too much to ask. And on top of all of that, we want those same people to give up their evenings and weekends to work after hours in case there's an emergency. Right?
It's unfair. It's totally unfair. And I find what's interesting is that the way you described it, right, that's not an unusual flow. Now take that flow and map that over 6.5 work orders per unit per year. So you're not just dealing with this one flow of data or of experience. It's multiple flows of data, multiple times of multiple steps. And so you could be midway through a work order, and all of a sudden there's a new one pops in. You got to triage it, so you got to figure out if it's emergency or not. You got to figure out if you're the person that can, is it an HVAC unit that requires a ticketed tech to do it, or can I unplug it and let it thaw out itself? Like, all those things are all happening, and everything is on fire. Like, everything.
And God forbid, by the way, God forbid that you have to get a vendor to do some work, because then you got to reach out to your vendor connections, get a bid from them, make sure that's okay within your not to exceed limits, schedule them, make sure it's on time. Like, God forbid you have to do that, because that just adds to it all. Yeah.
And so it's especially, I know it's a unique opportunity we're right now from an AI side of things, because like all of this front end overhead, and I think it's also, to be fair to them, it's the work that they want to be on tools. This is why they took the job. This is why they're in that job. And asking them to dedicate 3-4 hours of their day, right, in a place that they're not optimized for. Like, one of our customers made a really great line, and I use it all the time. that they have a different kind of genius. Their genius is the space, the contextual, working with hands, seeing problems. They can measure things out by looking at them, right? And we're asking them to spend all their time, and many times on a device with like a 4.5-inch screen to enter the details about why a toilet needs an oblong toilet lid versus a round one. It's not fair. You know, it feels as though we design these tools, we design them not with the user in mind. And that scenario creates a lot of gaps for what we're trying to succeed with. And so, you know, it's a bit of a design to fail right now for these folks. And to your point earlier, they've got other choices and they're leaving the industry. And so what happens when people leave the industry? How does it manage it? Like, how do we, if you've got if you got a full building and no maintenance staff, what happens?
Yeah. You pull in the crap. Well, you do one of two things. You turn to vendors, 100% to vendors, which we know is a much more expensive proposition, or you bring in one of these, dare I say, terrible temps from the temp agency, right? These are the people that are unhireable. Yeah. Gosh, I hope some of my friends that work for temp agencies aren't listening to this, but you are really bringing in maintenance people who are basically unhireable. Otherwise, they would be fully employed someplace else. And you bring them into your property, which they're not familiar with, and throw them into the chaos and expect them to be able to service your residents. So those are two really unattractive decisions or choices.
And in one voice, you're saying, yeah, or maybe let's get even worse. I'm going to borrow from my other overworked team, and we're going to call that a floater, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to have them. You got 300 units over there in St. Paul. I'm going to ask you to watch my 300 units in Minnesota, and then all there is in between there is a bit of a bridge and some water. You got to go manage that, right? Like, or Minneapolis, sorry. And so, like, we're asking them to do things that are just unnatural. We would never do ourselves. And so, this is where it's kind of interesting because, like, when I talk to customers, we talk about the three options to solve all problems: hire more people, vend it out, or look at technology and process. And usually, it's like, I really don't like my hiring technology and process because it makes me feel uncomfortable. Vending out is a little bit easier because at least it looks a lot like the same. And then hiring people, I love to hire people because I love having, it's fun to do and no one gets fired for doing that. Challenge is jobs aren't being filled. You're 90 days to staff a rec. You're to your point earlier, you're kind of dipping into the bottom part of the pool in many cases when it comes to the availability of staff because of the alternatives. If you're in Boston, Denver, Austin, Virginia, where they're building out data set, LA, Phoenix, where they're building out data centers, you're competing with like Facebook and Microsoft. Like, electricians are getting paid $270,000 a year. Like, where does the $35 an hour tech compete with that? It's not even close. And so you're resigned to the fact of what's available, and that can be really depressing from a leader perspective. And so of those first two options, and by the way, the second one is basically the first option, but just dressed up differently. You're into technology and process. And so, like, we have these conversations all the time, and you're having them right now. And like, what's the kind of feedback you're getting from the market on what's possible?
Yeah. So this is like, now we've set the stage for a technology that can really come in and have an impact, a massive impact to operations. And what's fun is that we couldn't do this 3 years ago, right?
No.
So this is all very much, it's passe to call it cutting edge, but it is all very bleeding edge. It's changes day by day, but there's a couple things that are real and that people should trust at this point. I know there's a lot of AI hype, but there's a few things you can trust. AI can now understand, properly trained, can with a cohort of data. For example, vendor is powered by about 500,000 work orders that were entered, right? With a corpus of data that's appropriate, AI can really comprehend and get right about 98% of the issues. Now, 2% can be a problem. That's why, for example, at vendor we have, and this is integral to the solution, a human in the loop component who's there to backstop for the 2% where AI gets confused, doesn't understand something new, edge case, right? So that you've got 100% coverage on solutions. But for the most part, you can trust AI to grab, at least our AI, about 98% of the context correctly and answer correctly.
So for reference, radiology, which is analyzing pictures, AI is 95% accurate and still has a human in the loop, right? And so when you take a look at like what's possible at 98%, we're exceeding the accuracy, the tolerance level of what we use to diagnose fractures, pneumonia, right? All these things right now. So the medical acceptability to diagnose someone's physical condition is 95%, and there's a human loop. Now we're talking 98%. So we've gone beyond what's become acceptable to diagnose in a health context. So like 98%, and that last 2%, it's well, they've already decided in medicine that it's not worth going for, right? It's unattainable. It's like an asymptote. But you can get to that 98%, and at 98%, you're solving so much more than what you're doing in person with human accuracy.
Well, that's a really important point too, because if people want to get hung up on, oh, there's 2% that AI gets it wrong or doesn't understand. Well, okay, but call all of the property managers you know right now and ask them how to fix an angle stop.
100%.
Right? You're gonna get 98% correct response.
No.
So what's your benchmark, right?
Yeah.
Oh, an overseas virtual assistant who's in the Philippines, who's never turned a wrench in their life. You want that person to be the one? Do you want that to be your knowledge base of answering your residents' questions and trying to de-escalate the scenario? I mean, that's kind of the only solution to that.
You just end up with a dispatch machine, right? Where it's just like dispatch. If your first option is dispatch, then you're just going to cost, no wonder we're already approaching NTE whenever we talk about NTE. Because like every average invoice in SFR is like $249 and the average NTE is like $250. Well, guess what? It's because you're dispatching all the time. And it gets even more expensive for after hours and weekends. So it's like it's failing.
Yeah, or people show up expecting to change a filter on an HVAC unit when it's really the thermostat that's not working, right? Or something along those lines, because the person doing the dispatch didn't have the training to understand the nuance. And AI can understand the nuance.
And you bring up two really good points, right? We talked about this about 4 weeks ago around variability, right? Humans are naturally variable. That's a reality. It's what we do.
Yeah.
And we are fallible. We make mistakes. When we get into an AI land, like you're not just 98% accurate on occasion. You're predictably 98% accurate all the time. And when we talk about, this is back in my days doing process work, like we realized real quick that it was the variability of results that crush your output. The averages is just the average. That's kind of where you perform at. And when you take the humans out of the conversation, you achieve a degree of predictability, which is what we're seeking in multifamily and in property management. I want to have confidence that I'm predictable. I'm going to be responding to my work orders within 24 to 48 hours by one standard deviation. Not that half of my work orders are done in 0 days and half of them are done in 10 days. I want to know that within one standard deviation of 12 hours or 6 hours, we hit the number, because then I can build predictability around that. And that's where AI is starting to solve the problem, is it smooths the dispersion of results.
Yeah.
Because it's so predictable and reliable. And when we change or tune the model, we begin to change the tune the model for the whole result set.
That's an interesting perspective on that. I like that comparison. And there's some very compelling results that we've seen at Venderoo that bear that. For example, we reduce the average work order time to complete, the work order velocity. We reduce that time to complete by about 37%, right? Because you get a cleaner, more well vetted work order with photos, because AI is talking to the residents, asking them for photos or texting at them. So you get an increase in velocity, and you get a reduction in overall work orders, because about 10% of the work orders just get handled by the AI. They're like, hit the GFI button, right? Reset your outlet. you get a 46% reduction in outstanding work orders because some work orders being taken off the table. The others are being, well vetted and presented. Yeah. So there's only one trip, and all of the other administrative work that prevents a technician from getting the jobs done goes away. They don't have to triage. They don't have to check in. They don't have to like the AI is handling that for them. And so you get almost a 50% reduction in the amount of open work orders, just by relieving them of the work they don't want to do anyway.
Exactly. And I think the thing that's interesting is like to put that in numbers for people that are listening, because we've had this same challenge a number of times where we say, hey, it can be this, these are all. Here's the numbers, right? Here's an example of the numbers. Is you get 100 right now, like property management doesn't do a good job of separating service requests and maintenance orders. They jump right to the maintenance order, which is a philosophical problem that I have with it, but I'm not going to solve that problem. Yeah. So you've got like 100 requests right now equal 100 work orders. And 100 work orders around 1.7 trips. So let's call it 170 trips, right? So, but how you just described it, and I'll use our math just because it's already baked in my head because I don't like doing math live, is like if I go 100 requests and at a 30% reduction rate, that gives me 70 work orders. And let's say I can do 1.1 trips for those 70 work orders. So now I'm at 80 work orders. So I've gone from 180 trips. I've gone from 170 trips to 80 trips. And the trip is the consumption unit in maintenance. That's where that is where all the overhead and waste lives and lasts. And so the 170 trips to 80 trips, that's half your work effort. And that's just the math. Because I find that people, I'd be curious, what's your response? When people say 50%, when you say 50% reduction, how do they respond to that?
Well, I think it blows people's minds that that's possible.
Yeah.
Because, the impact is twofold. It's or threefold. A, your technicians get more done. Secondly, they do more of what they like. They're happier and they're not overloaded doing the other stuff. So your churn gets reduced. And then thirdly, your residents are happier because their work orders are getting done faster the first time, or in your case, the 1.1 times that they go so the knock-on effects of this are significant. And it's the ROI isn't always as obvious. It's obvious if you have virtual assistants and you're replacing people that, in the single family world where there's virtual assistants and coordinators and all that stuff is done now by AI instead of by people. That ROI is obvious. But the impact to the work-life balance of your technicians, the happiness of your residents, the reputation of the property to property maintenance, like all of those things matter, even if they don't. Even if it's hard to correlate that directly to NOI.
Well, and I find what's really complicated about the human solution, right, is that we're asking for let's say a resident has a 12-month lease.
Yeah.
And that 12-month lease, they've got 6.5 work orders. And that 6.5 work orders that emerge, most of them are going to happen after hours. Where depending on how you're organized, you're relying on on-call staff or whatever, or maybe vending it out, maybe go straight to vendor. And like things
Somebody's
like
got
that.
The emergency phone. Who's got the emergency phone tonight? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. It's terrible. And it's a terrible existence, right? And so they're handing but that variability and that experience is amplified after hours. And it doesn't take too much math to figure out that the 40 hours of the work week is only 1/4 of the whole week. So by design, you're vulnerable for 75% of the possible occurrences by design, because that's something you don't control. That's your after hours. That's your, beyond 5 p.m. weekends. And so by design, you're vulnerable in that space. And so you're kind of architecting for lack of predictability. And what do humans love more than anything else? Predictability. That's why McDonald's is the biggest restaurant in the world, because it's like predictable garbage, but hey, it's the garbage I want to have. I'm going to go for it. And so if I can reliably get what I want, that makes a human being happy. And we're missing it because we're trying to solve the problem the old way, And what's interesting about, when I talk to maintenance folks, and be good to get your feedback here, is that like that clarity around the data is gappy, and that clarity around the outcomes is gappy when I'm talking to facilities leaders. What do you hear? Like, when people come to you and talk about Vendaroo and talk about the problem they're trying to solve, how do they express the problem?
So on the sort of the enterprise side of things,
Yeah.
The problem is generally expressed as chaos. Like
Right.
our maintenance process is chaotic, and we're burning out our precious maintenance technicians trying to get them to be everything to everyone and do it all.
Mhm.
That's typically how the problem presents. It doesn't start with, hey, our resident reviews are kind of crappy and our churn is higher than market. Must be something wrong with our maintenance process. Like, that's an observation that's made later after you've done something like this. So it typically it presents as just a sense of unease in the way things go on the maintenance side.
Do you find when you're talking to folks, like, is there a general awareness about the data? Like, if we're talking about a solution that drives a measurable outcome, but do you find when you talk to folks, like, do they have an awareness around how many work orders they get a year, how many work orders per unit? What is the another one I was talking about, what are the average FTEs per unit that they're carrying, right? Because they're trying to solve the problem with people. Like, what do you hear?
We are, as an industry, not really used to measuring ourselves by these kinds of KPIs. Like, we're not used to trying, in the way that we think, we're like, well, this is this size property and of this age with these amenities, and therefore I put that in my calculator and I come out with 2.3 technicians, and that's what I need. It's like, I'm at 100 units, I need 3 people. I'm at 150 units, I need 4 people. That's about as scientific as we really get. And part of the challenge is it is difficult to get some of the information that you're referring to out of property management systems. The reporting's there if you know what you're doing and you have the patience to put it together and then dump it into a BI tool. But for the most part, we aren't a industry of highly technical people who want to spend time doing that. We're people. That's why we're in this industry. And so actually, interestingly, I think what happens now with AI, and going back to your unstructured data, is you don't have to create these queries with Boolean arguments, if this, then that, and show me this. You don't have to worry about that. You can simply talk in natural language, like you can through our application called PMRU. You just talk in natural language and say, hey, I want to know how many work orders took longer than our SLA. Well, that's their software term. How many work orders took longer than our standard of practice of 24 hours for completed work orders, right? And just boom, just get the answer to that. Or do I have any evidence of persistent water leaks at any of my properties, and immediately get an answer to that sort of thing? That is also life-changing. So there's the operational piece, and then there's the insights that come now through natural language queries, which has never been possible until the last 24.
I think what's interesting, what you described, though, like the outcome of natural language processing and queries is a result of data sets that are enhanced with AI, so they're practical in that NLP context. Because if all of my data comes in and looks like leak in living room, or I have a leak, like sometimes I have a leak, then that's not very practical from an NLP perspective. But like what I've seen with what your guys are doing is that you conversationally enhance the data by seeking incremental detail from the resident as they're submitting the ticket in a I say conversational because it's not annoying. Like, there are annoying ways to ask for data, but it is like a conversational method to extract that data about the detail so that the resident isn't done at the leak in living room submit stage. There's actually a genuine curiosity around discovering what the problem is and then making that structured so you can automate, do all those things on it afterwards. It's really remarkable when you consider what's possible with the tools that are available today. Like it's kind of, we're gonna be at a point now where it's like there's be no excuse in 2027 to have bad data and maintenance. It means you made a choice to have bad data.
When I started Leo, we knew everybody was doing inspections on paper and not aggregating the data and not getting at it in a way that could give them any insights. Like we knew that was a problem. But there were, and still are, a number of people that were just kind of okay with that. Like, look, it's fine. My properties operate. I get done, right. I mean, the expectations operationally were so low that the improvement in operational rigor and discipline didn't always matter to people if they weren't in the right kind of mindset. This feels different. This does feel different in that everyone recognizes if it's so easy, if it doesn't require a massive shift in the way you do business, which is the case here. Like nobody has to learn a new piece of software. Nobody has to necessarily even log into anything. An AI teammate shows up and just starts executing. And in that scenario, when there's also, cost reductions to be had and all these other improvements, it does seem like a year from now, if you're not doing something like this, like, do you even want to, manage? Are you even interested?
Well, I would say
the best job you can.
Yeah, I would say you're being negligent. Like that's my opinion on it. Because I feel so strongly about the people that are on the site that if you're not like actively seeking to mitigate the pain that they're suffering through on a day-to-day basis, you don't care about your people. And don't tell me otherwise. Like I will argue with someone to the ground that if you're actively putting someone in a bad work environment, you're negligent for their work. Like you're negligent for their work environment. You are making the null choice is also a choice.
Yeah.
And so choosing not to do something, that is still a choice. And so the conviction around or the storyline of we care about our people, et cetera, or they don't want to accept technology, it feels to me like you're often like thrusting them into situations that are unpractical for success. And given the availability of technology.
Yes, and could also cripple you from a recruiting standpoint. I'm waiting for, here's how we know when there's been a real sea change. When maintenance technicians start showing up for their interview for their new job and they start asking, like, do you have AI to handle all the phone calls? Like, you're using AI, right? I don't have to take the phone calls from the resident and like do all that stuff. Okay, great. I'll work here. Oh no, I got to still do all that stuff.
Peace.
Sorry, I'm out.
Yeah. Here's the keys. I'm dropping them. I'm not going to take them. I totally agree. I mean, particularly if you consider like, imagine writing I see them, you see them writing these job descriptions for these maintenance technicians. And you look at them, and you go, my God, like it's medieval what we're asking them to do. You know what I mean? And so I try and I mean, obviously you cast empathy across everybody in the situation. And there's a lot of like, it's what it is. But I feel like when you give the answer, it's what it is. I feel like you're not truly, authentically committed to optimizing the situation. You've got other priorities. And to your comment about like Leo, when you started Leo, like, I don't know if I would have optimized for maintenance in 2020 through to 2024. I probably would have focused on leasing too, because it was where I got a greater return on my dollars. I could really maximize the result set. But I just don't think that within the compression of rents and then the expansion of the bottom part of the P&L, like the middle part is just getting squeezed. And if you're just relying on people and paper to get the job done, it's medieval.
Yeah. And we've already seen this successful in the world of leasing agents.
Yeah.
Like you really don't expect leasing agents anymore to have to like take the call and, pull up the availability and then schedule the time. Like that was never the highest and best use of those people.
Right.
To have that done through AI and then just have the leasing agents there to sell, that freed them up to do the thing they were best at.
Right.
And this is now what's going to happen on the maintenance side.
So when you're on the market, I mean, we talked about 1099s, W-2s, we talk about those that are seeking change. Like, how are you able to test for those that are seeking change? We talked about, what's the what are they seeking to solve? But like, how can you figure out, like, there's 45 million rental units in the US. Of that 45 million, which one is being run by somebody who's got to solve a problem, who has a priority around this?
Well, that's a very interesting go-to-market question that you ask somebody who's ostensibly in charge of building out a marketplace.
Hell yes. It's the hell yes buyer, right?
Yeah. So if you want to look at like the pain meter.
Yeah, the pain meter. Well, that's what it is, right? Like, no one negotiates with the fireman. So
Yeah.
whose house is on fire?
Well, the place we start with, set the single family aside, because that is a giant dumpster fire, and
Well,
obviously they need help, and like
and legislation is just water. So it's a dumpster fire. It's very unfortunate to get waterboarded while you're in a dumpster fire.
It's a huge bummer.
It's a huge bummer.
I totally agree.
Right.
And so like this is life-changing for them. And I don't want to really spend a lot of time there because I'm really focused on, my family and in the multifamily world. But this is going to completely change the way people manage single family homes. But we'll set that aside. The next highest on the pain-o-meter are those folks that have a mix of, call it institutional class assets, 100 units or more, but still have a portfolio of like those, 14 to 50 unit properties, which is a lot of that 45 million you mentioned. I think there's about 15 million of those that we think are in this range, these owner operators have this kind of mixed portfolio. Yes, they have a few big properties where people are on site, technicians are on site, but there's a whole batch of those where they're trying some mix of centralization or share, like you mentioned, they're like sharing a guy between whatever. If you have that going on, this is a godsend for you too. Yeah. This will be life-changing. I think the fact that people are even talking about centralization, if you are talking or thinking about centralization, you're thinking about that because you're running into the problem that we're talking about. You're talking about a dearth of technicians or an inability to hire, or, like the properties don't quite have the right scale to support them. So you have to share them. And if you're thinking about any of those things, this is the solution. This has been the solution to your problem. It just hasn't been available until now.
Well, I think in a lot of cases, like this is a really good segue, by the way, like the centralization, I mean, it's lukewarm right now in terms of success out there in multifamily. And some people aren't even using the word anymore because it's got a lower batting average than other batting averages. And it's getting to a point that like the centralization conversation is a function of, we tried to, this is my grandmother's expression. We just kind of use dirty mop water. Like we just kind of like move the dirt around instead of actually change the water. And the expression comes from the fact that we just took the same people and moved them around. We called it pods, which is like the upside down version of the right side up. Or we called it, we floaters, which is the same, the other way around. We didn't really solve the problem of the lack of capacity with the work that was being done. We just moved the people around, and like it didn't really result. And we're shocked that it didn't work out. And we called all the different practices the exact same thing. We didn't really change the technology that much, and so consequently, it didn't do what it did, because I think the tools that we used to centralize didn't necessarily fit the gap that needed to be closed.
Yeah, I wonder, you don't really talk about this, but I sort of wonder if the landscape of the maintenance vendor world will change as a result of this. Because if you get, right now there's very imperfect assignment, routing, communication methodologies. There's no workforce automation in this industry that can be deployed, across all these disparate kinds of vendors, because nobody wants to adopt the same application or use the same tool. And I just wonder if we'll put a pin in this and we'll come back a year from now. I wonder if you start seeing the entire vendor marketplace shift towards their availability being more reliant upon AI to do this in a much more efficient way, such that they can do more work in a shorter amount of time at a lower price point. and that becomes a more attractive option for assets that can't have technicians on site, or can't have as many technicians on site as they really need to properly service that property. Just as we're talking about it.
I think, if you go and actually, and we did this one time with a previous business, we actually had to measure the tool time, and the actual tool time was like nauseating how low it was because of all the things we threw at it. As we hire these people for specific skill sets that, and subject matter expertise, and then we go and ask them to do 75% of their work is stuff that's not in that ballpark. And we paid them for that 20%, the 25%. We paid them to be subject matter experts in this space. But then the tool time is really feels like 20% of their workday, and the rest of it is just running around. And that's because we're forced them to do that, given the way we've architected the systems. It's again, I have so much empathy for these folks on site. I've chatted with them, I've walked with them, I've done all this stuff. And the level of empathy of the things they've got to deal with on a regular basis that they feel helpless to. Anybody who's listening, get a chance to go walk a site, or walk an inspection where they're bouncing back and forth, or walk a work order where they're kind of like guessing what the problem is, and then they're back and forth, or seeing a golf cart that's so full of every single possible tool to solve that problem.
Every filter,
every single filter, every single parked outside of a unit or out of a building, and you're just like, oh my god, it can be so much better. And that's the part that I find most inspiring about this AI conversation in maintenance, is that we're really going to change the lives of people at the site level, and it's going to make a meaningful difference in their existence.
And in this conversation, we've been very focused on that, because I think my background, and Leo, your background at Iris, we've been always thinking about the site level operations and how to. But there is something else happening. Tacitly that I think that I want to just kind of touch on, because we're really in the weeds right now on what's happening at the site level. But as companies are adopting this kind of solution and embedding their own point of view about emergency escalations and how we want to triage this, and how we want to, what's our process for handling, this kind of repair, as people were building these kinds of things in the Venderoo brain and other maintenance technologies, what they are slowly aggregating is a brain that reflects the way they want to run their business. And so there's this term people are starting to use now called a system of action. The PMS platforms, we've always called those a system of record for the long time. And we don't want to touch your system of record. How we say it all the time, Leo. We're going to put everything back into your system of record because that was precious.
Yeah.
As you start to build this brain, you're going to want to talk to and give directions to and derive insights from the brain, not the system of record. And so this system of action that we're building, that everyone's building right now, whether they know it or not, who's using AI, is going to rise, I think, in importance in this industry and sit really alongside, maybe on top of, the property management systems as the most important reflection of your values and processes as an organization. And that's going to be a very different world for us as well, when you can kind of turn off the switch for regional managers and directors of operations to figure out on a daily basis what we should be doing, and just sort of I'm going to date myself here, but I'm remembering Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the guy at the keyboard, and he's trying to talk to the spaceship. He's like, boo, 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 boo. And then they start talking, and he's like, boo, boo, doo, boo, and then he's like, I'm going to go on autopilot. And he perks on autopilot. It's like, boo, boo, doo, boo, doo, boo, doo, ba, da, ba, da, ba, da, ba, da. Well, that's where we're heading in property management. You're going to get out of the day-to-day, oh, do we fix this toilet? Do we this? And you're just going to be like, boop, doop, 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 and you're just going to step back and go for it. Go for it.
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting. If you're, let's roll it. I appreciate how you're rolling it up, right? Let's roll it up. I don't think there's an asset manager in the country that sleeps the whole night through, because there's part of them that wakes up and wonders, right?
Something's going wrong in your portfolio right now.
Right now, something's going wrong. And so, for the asset managers and the regionals and the roll up of all these things where they get compounding events. Oh, and God forbid a weather event occurs, right? Snowfall,
right.
38 in Rhode Island, right? Like all those things that occur, that compounding anxiety, it can just be like eliminated. It's gone because it relies on humans that are a broken process with people that have bad data that are just doing their best, right? Like you can only do your best so well with a broken system and broken data. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And I just,
resources that have limited memories, that have a lot of turnover.
Yeah.
Like even if you have everything nailed down this week, then next week you lose two of your most important people and you feel like you're back to square one.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about it is you may lose those two different people to your own company. Like they may have moved over to a better building, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or they're now in a floating team. Like it cannibalizes success in such a way that it's designed. I think the part that's the most encouraging and I'm hopeful for is this status quo is its half-life is rapidly reaching zero because it's on a double decline. There's just no possible way that you can consciously think about operating a 300 unit building, 150 unit building with the assumption that I'm going to staff it with a 1 by 100 unicorn, 3 of them in that building. Or if I'm running a 250, I'm going to do it for 2.5 or whatever. The half person doesn't exist. They just do not exist. And so like, I hope someday there's an owner or a client or a banker out there that looks at an underwriting and says, how are you doing on this building? Oh my God, you're going to have 3 techs that are going to work here? Okay, show me those 3 techs because I don't believe they exist. And if you can't get those 3 techs in there, then your revenue numbers are wrong because you're going to have this in terms of your renewals. Then your capital budget is wrong because you're going to have this on your boiler repairs. And then your actual, like your ability to actually maintain the asset that I'm asking you to curate for me and be a fiduciary for. Am I really going to get that asset increase? Am I really going to be able to exit and refi this in 7 years when I want to get a bit of an exit or get my promote as a developer? Like, those are all, you're throwing all of those at a risk profile that we're not really willing to accept anymore.
I think you've just given out a good investment tip. I'm going to double click on it. You should start buying overstaffed properties right now. Before people realize the P&L is overloaded with expense.
Yeah, right. Totally.
That's your learning for today.
Totally. Because those properties you can optimize and be able to get those things to turn around. Right. We lost your mic a little bit. You got to bring your mic closer.
Oh, did my nose turn it off?
You're good now. This is awesome. So when you're out there and like you hear no's sometimes, this is always because like all this stuff sounds awesome, right? We all agree on it. We're all nodding our heads, but not everyone buys. What kind of objections do you get?
With no close second, the objections are that they don't trust that we can deliver on the results that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. With no close second.
Gotcha.
The good news is that this is it's something that can be piloted fairly easy in a limited part of the portfolio to prove out that it does what we represent that it does. So there's a trust chasm at the moment. And for good reason. I mean, I think there's still plenty of stories every day. And there's still plenty of stories every day that talk about failures in AI. They can be comical, right? But remember, we're not even guaranteeing the AI is going to get it wrong or right 100% of the time. We actually know that it will get it wrong, but we backstop that with a cadre of well-trained human in the loops that are there to catch you when you fall. But which I think everyone should hear, which is, by the way, how all AI is developed. All AI in the world, all result sets are built that way. That is how you get to higher confidence intervals. Frankly, if you're talking to a technology company that their AI isn't backed by a human in the loop watching, like you're really putting yourself at risk.
Yeah.
Like that's a bad idea.
It's the best practice. Right? Show me the before
Right.
and show me the after. That is the best practice.
Right. And you said it, it's like an asymptote earlier. Like you will get close to the x-axis, but you'll never quite get there.
No, but it's not worth it. If you can solve 100% of 98 is flipping awesome. Yeah. Right? Because you're probably sitting around 65 right now at best. And it's not predictable and it's not reliable, right? So an unreliable 65% versus a totally reliable 98%, I don't know.
Take that all day long.
All day long. Like you go to the tables and you bet on things, that's a good bet. You know, that's how that works. When you look back at kind of your, kind of wrapping this up, when you look back at all the things that you've done and a bit of advice you'd give yourself when you first started out, what advice did you give yourself?
Oh, who's my audience? Me as a prop tech person, or me as a multifamily operator owner?
Daniel Cunningham, the headbanger, driving a T-top playing Loverboy in the cassette deck.
Oh, you do know my age and generation, don't you?
Well, I'm the same age and generation.
Well, the real estate management, and in particular multifamily habitational, is one of the most challenging industries. And I've said this a million times before. It's worth repeating. The investment side is far more, because I've been on both, as you know. The investment side is far more rewarding than the operational side. If you're going to get into the operational side, do yourself a favor and do whatever you can to make your life easier, right? Just because something's new, hasn't been done before, like please don't be mired in this is the way we've always done it, because that's a path to mental self-destruction. Yeah. So if something comes along that can make your life easier, don't be penny wise and pound foolish, and like worry about, a point off of your NOI if it makes you or your staff happier, more productive, right? Less turnover. Like that point or two of NOI is worth it. I never understood why we're so obsessed with paying the least amount possible for a property manager to manage my $150 million asset. Right? If I had $150 million, I wouldn't pick a wealth manager that was the lowest paid possible. It's so bizarre that we do that.
Yes,
and
I agree.
Yeah. So
Adrian makes the point all the time. Why are we hiring a convenience store clerk? Why are we paying convenience store clerk wages for $150 million assets?
It's because we can. People say this is a people business. We love to say that. I see my friends on LinkedIn that are on the operations side, especially those are on the leasing side and the marketing people and people that are like leasing. And I see them say all the time, we're a people first business. That is not true. I know that's not true because we don't pay people very well. If this business really relied on people, we would pay them really well, but we don't. We pay them the least amount we can pay them to get them to not quit.
It's so funny you mentioned that. I've got that written down as a blog post article right here. You can't read it, but it's an article to write about, talking about is this really a people first business? Because I'm pretty sure it's a banking business. I'm pretty sure it's a banking business.
I didn't mean to steal your thunder on that, but now you have to.
No. I mean, I appreciate you bringing up the point that I didn't really think about that we don't pay them like it is a people business, right? And it's frustrating.
I feel my heart goes out to people that have chosen to make this their career because they don't get the respect they deserve for the hard work they put in.
Yeah, totally. Who should we have on next to the show?
I think that there are other interesting things being done in AI right now. And I think since we just talked about the kind of the investment side, I think there are a couple of companies on the AI front that are automating underwriting and make how you make investment choices. I think that would be interesting to kind of continue this thread.
Yeah, I like it. I was chatting about underwriting with somebody just a few weeks back. And not only in the brokerage side, it's interesting because you got like the automating the P&L, automating the pro forma, automating the underwriting, automating the selection, automating the availability of properties. It's all really hitting hard. And you see that in the brokerage, like AI is really eating the lunch of the brokerage side of things. And then obviously the next level down is that underwriting of those properties because it's all structured data. It's very repeatable when you have structured data.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I love your comment on do whatever you can do to make it easier because it doesn't need to be this hard. It doesn't need to be designed to be this hard. And if you take there's a discipline called ethnography where you follow humans doing human things. And you went and just, if it's such a people business and that's the claim, then go follow the people and see what the people are doing. It takes nothing but a day, 8 hours to follow somebody on site and observe what they're doing and be empathetic to the work they're doing. And if you don't get enough on that one work day, follow them on a weekend and see what that looks like. Follow them on a storm and see what that looks like. And you will open your eyes as to what the work that they're doing and the amount of just burden that they carry. And the part that's criminal is that all of it could go away. That's the part that I think is the most irresponsible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I think what you're talking about is sort of related to a study like architects will do. They'll look at a site and they'll see like the nicely landscaped grounds.
Yeah.
And then they'll see the path that's been worn by people who don't want to walk on your little pathways. They want to get to where they want to go. Like that's where you put the path. Don't force people to go around. Just put the path where people want to walk. Make it easier for them.
Make it easier.
Let's do that.
Make it easy. It's not too hard. I totally love that. All right. Well, thanks, Daniel, today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you everyone for listening today. This was an awesome conversation. Listen to the podcast, like, subscribe, follow, do those things. So it makes it easier to find people or find the show. And once again, thanks a lot, Daniel. This is super fun. And
thanks.
I'm excited. I'm excited for the conversation. I think we can, in the AI space, we can help a lot of people have better lives and better employment. And I'll leave with one thing here is that with AI, we can actually increase wages because we're going to have a more productive workforce.
And
so in the challenges of, I always like to find out how people get paid. But ultimately, if you're dividing a payroll by 4 and 5 people, you just can't afford more people. But if you're using artificial intelligence, you're dividing it by 3, now you can pay people more. You can hire better people and you can make their lives better.
Yeah. Can you allow just a little bit of that to go back to people's salaries and not just accrue it all to NOI and returns on investment? Please.
Please.
Component here.
Excellent.
Thanks a lot for having me on.
Thanks, Daniel. Take care.
Yeah. See you.